Welcome back to Ancient Edge, where history refuses to stay buried. Today, we venture into a chapter of the past that most documentary channels overlook, not because it lacks drama, but because it reveals something profoundly human about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Forget the Hollywood image of the Second World War as a conflict fought exclusively on distant battlefields by trained soldiers. This is the story of a different kind of warrior, the civilian, the gardener, the homemaker, the shopkeeper. When invasion seemed not just possible but imminent, citizens across Britain and occupied territories faced a terrifying question. What do we do when the enemy comes to our door? The answer, as we'll discover, lies in the spaces between the floorboards, the gardens behind their homes, and the kitchens they knew so intimately. Prepare yourself for a journey into improvisation, born from desperation, where the greatest weapon wasn't forged in a factory. It was imagined in the minds of people who refused to surrender without a fight. The year was 1940. Nazi Germany stood triumphant across the Channel, and invasion of Britain seemed inevitable to many. Operation Sea Lion, Hitler's planned amphibious assault on the British Isles, sent shivers through the national consciousness. The government quietly distributed pamphlets asking citizens to prepare for the worst. Suddenly, the concept of home transformed from sanctuary into fortress, and every British citizen, regardless of age or ability, became a potential defender. This wasn't abstract fear, it was existential dread. What followed was a psychological awakening that fundamentally altered how ordinary people perceived their surroundings. The cozy parlour held defensive possibilities, the pantry became an arsenal, the garden shed transformed into a supplier of weapons both ingenious and desperate. This shift in perspective, from consumer to warrior, from civilian to soldier, activated a latent human instinct we rarely discuss: the ancient will to defend one's territory, one's family, one's way of life. The British Home Guard, formed in May 1940, formalised this impulse, enlisting over 3 million men, too old, too young, or otherwise unable to join the regular armed forces. These citizens weren't given fancy equipment or extensive training. Instead, they were handed responsibility and expected to make do. This Home Guard mentality sparked an explosion of creative thinking that would astound modern observers. Among the most celebrated improvised weapons of the era was one of humanity's oldest tools, the shovel. British military handbooks actually published techniques for sharpening shovels and wielding them as effective close combat weapons. The humble spade, suddenly reconceptualized, became what soldiers termed a trench shovel, a multi-purpose instrument capable of devastating defensive strikes. But the shovel wasn't alone in its transformation. The fireplace poker, that ornamental iron rod designed for nothing more aggressive than arranging burning logs, acquired sinister new purpose in households across the nation. Its weight, its reach, its pointed end. Suddenly, these mundane characteristics made it a formidable defensive tool for a cornered homeowner. Similarly, garden implements underwent radical repurposing. The garden fork, the mattock, the hoe, tools designed for cultivation became instruments of confrontation. A well-maintained garden fork in the hands of a determined defender could inflict serious injury, and its agricultural utility meant that homes throughout Britain already contained them. British military strategists and Home Guard commanders explicitly encouraged this repurposing, recognizing that morale mattered as much as actual capability. When a grandmother holding a garden fork believed she could defend her home, that belief itself became valuable psychological armor. Perhaps nowhere did improvisation become more macabre and creative than in the kitchen. That sacred space transformed into a chemistry lab of desperation. Glass bottles and jars, ubiquitous in every household, could be filled with caustic solutions or flammable liquids, then hurled from upper-story windows at advancing soldiers. The British developed unofficial recipes for improvised incendiary devices using household materials, though military records on these remain carefully sanitized. Boiling water and hot oil represented perhaps the oldest defensive strategy known to medieval fortifications, adapted for residential warfare. A cauldron of water set above a doorway or window could inflict severe burns on anyone attempting forced entry. Hot oil, more damaging still, could be poured from upper floors onto attackers below. Kitchen knives, naturally sharpened and readily at hand, became weapons of last resort in close-quarters combat. But even humble utensils took on new significance. The rolling pin, the meat cleaver, even forks and sturdy wooden spoons were envisioned as tools of final defense for those who would not surrender their homes without drawing blood. Beyond improvised weapons themselves lay the infrastructure of home defense. Tripwires constructed from common string and fishing line, connected to tin cans filled with pebbles or small bells, created early warning systems that could alert defenders to intruders moving through gardens or down hallways. These analog alarm systems exploited basic physics and human psychology in equal measure. The noise not only warned residents, but psychologically disoriented potential attackers. Furniture itself became tactical. Sturdy wooden tables, wardrobes, and dressers were strategically positioned to create barricades, turning rooms into defensible spaces. Heavy sofas became obstacles in hallways. Doors could be reinforced with wooden planks and furniture jammed beneath handles. The home's architecture itself was reimagined through a military lens. Then came the chemical deterrents, perhaps the most disturbing aspect of civilian home defense planning. Household cleaners like bleach and ammonia, already common under kitchen sinks, could be weaponized. Mixed or thrown, these substances could temporarily incapacitate an attacker. While military records rarely elaborate on exactly how these were intended for use, the implication remains chilling. Civilians were being encouraged to think of their homes as chemical battlefields where survival justified any improvisation. What emerges from studying World War II home defense is not merely a catalogue of crude weapons or desperate measures, but a testament to human adaptability under existential pressure. These ordinary people, faced with invasion and annihilation, didn't collapse into paralysis. They reimagined their worlds. They looked at their possessions and saw potential where others saw only domestic comfort. This legacy of resourcefulness extends far beyond World War II. In our modern age of specialized equipment and technological dependence, the World War II civilians' ability to see defensive potential in ordinary objects reminds us of a fundamental truth. Preparation isn't about acquiring fancy gear. It's about cultivating perspective. It's about understanding that resourcefulness is a skill, one honed through practice and imagination, whether in genuine emergencies or in the metaphorical battles we all face. The capacity to look at what we have and ask, how can this serve me, remains eternally relevant. The spirit of improvisation that animated those kitchens and gardens 80 years ago speaks to something deeper in the human character, our refusal to accept helplessness, our creativity when backed against the wall, our capacity to transform the mundane into the meaningful. These weren't soldiers, they were shopkeepers and teachers, farmers and nurses, and when the moment demanded it, they became defenders of everything they held dear, armed not with superior weaponry, but with superior determination and ingenuity. The next time you walk through your home, consider it as those World War II civilians did. Not as a mere shelter, but as a space of potential, not with fear, but with the clear-eyed recognition that resourcefulness and preparation are timeless virtues. History doesn't just show us what happened, it shows us what we're capable of becoming when circumstances demand it. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the hidden corners of history. If this exploration of human ingenuity and survival fascinated you, we invite you to subscribe to Ancient Edge and never miss another story, of how ordinary people shaped the extraordinary events of their time. Share this video with others who hunger for the deeper truths that mainstream history overlooks. And continue exploring with us, because the past isn't just where we've been. It's where we discover who we really are.